The hall fell silent when the tall man in the simple brown suit stepped forward and took the microphone. A moment ago, the room had been loud with laughter. People had been whispering, pointing, and shaking their heads. Some even covered their mouths to hide their smiles. All because of one woman. Amina Adeyemi. She stood at the center of the wedding hall in Ibadan, Nigeria, her hands trembling slightly as she held her husband's arm. Her white dress was neat but modest. No diamonds. No gold shining under the lights. Just calm beauty and quiet pride. They had mocked her for marrying a poor tailor. Is this the man she chose? Someone had whispered earlier. Amina, the banker's daughter, another had laughed. After all her education, she could have married a politician. And the loudest insult of all came from her own cousin, Funk, who had not even bothered to lower her voice. So all those years of schooling, Funk said, smiling cruelly, and you end up with a roadside tailor. Amina had heard it. She had heard everything. Still, she said nothing. Now, the tailor she married raised his head. His name was Kunle Ajayi. Kunle adjusted the microphone gently, like someone used to speaking carefully. His eyes moved across the room. Across the faces that had laughed. Across the people who had refused to greet him properly. Across the rich uncles who had told Amina's parents that this marriage was a mistake. Then he spoke. Thank you, Kunle said softly, for coming to celebrate with us. His voice was calm, steady, and clear. Some people shifted in their seats. I know many of you think you know who I am, he continued. You see me as a poor tailor. A man who sews clothes in a small shop. A man not good enough for this woman. A few nervous laughs followed. Amina tightened her grip on his arm. Kunle smiled, not in anger, but in kindness. But today, he said, I think it is time you know the full truth. The hall grew colder, though the air conditioner had not changed. My name is Kunle Ajayi, he went on. I am the founder and chief designer of Ajayi Global Fashion House. Someone dropped a spoon. A woman gasped loudly. Funk's smile froze. Kunle did not stop. For the past 10 years, my designs have been sold in New York, Paris, and London. I stayed away from the spotlight by choice. I built my business quietly. And by God's grace, I am a billionaire. The silence that followed was heavier than thunder. Amina felt tears rush to her eyes, not from shock, but from relief. The people who had mocked her could not breathe. And just as murmurs began to rise like a storm, Kunle turned to Amina, took her hand, and said words that would change everything. I stayed hidden, he said, because I wanted a wife who loved me, not my money. Before anyone could speak, a group of men in dark suits entered the hall. And one of them bowed. Years earlier, before any wedding, before any whispers, Amina Adeyemi lived a simple but respected life. She worked at a small microfinance bank in Ibadan. Every morning, she woke before sunrise, said her prayers, and walked to the bus stop with her bag pressed tightly against her chest. She was known as kind, quiet, and focused. Her parents were well known in the community. Her father, Baba Adeyemi, was retired but respected. Her mother sold fabrics and lace at Dogby Market. Many people believed Amina would marry well. Suitors came. A car dealer once came with gifts. A politician's assistant came with promises. A rich widower came with a big house and a bigger ego. Amina refused them all. She was not proud. She was just careful. I want peace, she told her mother one evening as they folded clothes together. Not noise. Her mother laughed. Peace does not pay school fees. Still, Amina waited. One rainy afternoon, her umbrella broke near a small street in Mokola. She ran into a narrow shop to hide from the rain. The sign above it read, Kunle Tailoring Services. Inside, the shop was clean but simple. Fabrics were neatly arranged. A sewing machine hummed softly. Connor looked up from his work. "You are welcome," he said kindly. That was how they met. At first, they spoke only of small things. Weather. Clothes. Life. Connor fixed her torn sleeve without charging her extra. Amina thanked him and left. But she returned. Again and again. Not because of the clothes, but because of the peace she felt there. Connor never asked for much. He listened more than he spoke. He respected her time. He never bragged. Never complained. Over time, friendship grew. Then something deeper. When Connor finally told her he wanted to marry her, he did not kneel with a ring. He did not promise riches. "I don't have much," he said honestly. "But my heart is steady." Amina smiled. "That is enough." When she told her family, the trouble began. "A tailor?" her father asked, shocked. "Does he own land? Does he own a car? Who knows him?" Warnings came from all sides. People laughed behind her back. Still, Amina stood firm. Love, she believed, was not a competition. The wedding day arrived. And so did the mockery. Now, back in the hall, as the men in suits stood quietly behind Connor, one of them stepped forward and spoke. "Sir," he said respectfully, "the guests from Milan and New York have arrived." Amina's heart raced. The room spun. Connor looked at her, eyes full of warmth. "Are you ready?" he asked softly. Before she could answer, her mother collapsed into a chair, tears streaming down her face. And Funk fainted. The truth had only just begun to unfold. The wedding hall was no longer noisy. People who had laughed earlier now sat stiff in their chairs, afraid to move, afraid to speak. Some looked at Connor as if he might disappear if they blinked. Others looked at Amina with new eyes, eyes full of regret. The men in dark suits moved calmly through the hall. They spoke softly into their phones. One of them guided a group of foreign guests inside. They were dressed simply but carried themselves with quiet confidence. A woman with short silver hair smiled warmly at Connor. "Congratulations, Connor," she said in a gentle American accent. "You kept this wedding very private." Connor laughed softly. That was the plan. Amina stood beside him, still trying to understand everything. Her legs felt weak. Her mind felt full. "So, you are really," she whispered. Connor turned to her. "Yes," he said kindly. "But I am still the same man who fixed your sleeve." Tears rolled down Amina's cheeks. Not tears of fear. Not tears of pain. Tears of trust rewarded. Her father slowly stood up. The proud man who had once questioned Connor now walked forward with shaking hands. "My son," Baba Adeyemi said, his voice low, "forgive me." Connor bowed slightly. "There is nothing to forgive, sir." The crowd watched in silence. But not everyone felt peace. At the back of the hall, Funk's mother, Auntie Sola, sat stiff and angry. Her daughter had always been the favorite. Funk had always been loud, proud, and sure she would marry rich. Now, the poor tailor had become richer than everyone in the room. Auntie Sola leaned toward her husband. "This is shame," she whispered. "He made fools of us." Her husband sighed. "No. We did that ourselves." As the ceremony continued, the pastor spoke about love, humility, and patience. His words felt heavier now, as if they were meant for everyone listening. "True wealth," the pastor said, "is not what you show, but what you hide and still keep good." Some guests lowered their heads. After the wedding, outside the hall, expensive black cars waited quietly. Drivers stood straight. Cameras flashed. News spread fast. "Billionaire fashion designer marries local banker," a blogger whispered into her phone. "He hid his wealth," another said. She saw his heart, someone replied. Amina felt overwhelmed. Later that evening, when the guests had eaten and danced, Kunle led Amina away from the crowd. They sat under a tree behind the hall. The night was calm. Crickets sang softly. I never asked you why you lived so simply, Amina said after a while. Kunle smiled. Because you never cared. He looked at the sky. My father was rich, he said slowly. Very rich. But he was never home. Money filled the house, but love did not. Amina listened quietly. When he died, Kunle continued, people fought over his money. Family turned against family. I promised myself I would never let wealth choose my wife for me. So you tested me? Amina asked gently. Kunle shook his head. No. I trusted life to reveal the truth. She reached for his hand. That night, as they returned home, Amina expected something big. A mansion. Guards. Gates. Instead, Kunle drove her to the same modest house he had always lived in. This is where I'm comfortable, he said. For now. The next morning, the trouble began. The story was everywhere. Radio stations talked about it. Social media argued about it. Some praised Amina. Some mocked others. And some people came with new faces. Old friends who had ignored Kunle now called him brother. Distant relatives suddenly remembered his birthday. Worst of all, the people who had insulted Amina came to apologize. Funk arrived with a forced smile and a gift basket. Cousin, she said sweetly, we were just joking that day. Amina looked at her calmly. Words are not jokes when they leave scars, she replied. Funk looked away. Auntie Sola came later, crying loudly, begging Kunle to forgive her family. Kunle listened politely, but said little. Peace does not rush, he believed. One afternoon, Kunle took Amina to his real office for the first time. The building was tall. Glass shone in the sun. Inside, designers worked quietly. Screens showed fashion sketches from around the world. Amina covered her mouth. You built all this, she whispered. Kunle nodded. But I still choose to come home quietly, he said. With you. Just as Amina began to feel safe again, a message arrived on Kunle's phone. His smile faded. Someone from his past had seen the news. Someone who knew his secret. Someone who did not like how the truth came out. Kunle locked the phone and looked at Amina. We may face trouble, he said gently. Amina straightened her shoulders. Then we face it together. Outside the glass building, a man stood watching. And he was not smiling. The man outside the glass building waited until Kunle and Amina drove away. His name was Ton Baligan. Years ago, he and Kunle had started small together. They had shared ideas, late nights, and dreams. But when success came, their paths broke apart. Ton wanted quick fame. Kunle wanted quiet growth. Greed stood between them, and friendship did not survive. Now Ton had seen the news. The poor tailor, he muttered, watching the cars disappear. So he finally showed himself. Ton smiled, but it was not a happy smile. That evening, Kunle told Amina everything. Ton knows too much, Kunle said calmly as they sat in their living room. He once tried to force me into bad deals. When I refused, he left and promised I would regret it. Amina felt a chill but kept her voice steady. Do you think he would try again? Kunle nodded. Power attracts noise. 2 days later, the noise came. Blogs began to post strange stories. Was Kunle Ajayi really poor? Did he lie to his wife? Is his company hiding secrets? People who once praised him now question him. Amina read the comments quietly. Some hurt. Some made her angry. They are trying to shame you, she said. Kunle shook his head. They are trying to shame us. That night, Kunle received an invitation. A big fashion conference in Lagos. Cameras. Press. Investors. Ton would be there. They want you to speak, Amina said after reading the letter. You should go. Kunle looked at her carefully. Are you sure? She smiled softly. Truth does not hide forever. On the day of the event, the hall was full. Designers, journalists, and business leaders filled the room. Lights flashed. Microphones waited. Ton sat in the front row. When Kunle walked onto the stage, the room went quiet. He did not wear expensive clothes. Just a clean, simple suit. My story is not perfect, Kunle began. I hid my wealth. Not to deceive, but to protect my values. He spoke about patience. About humility. About choosing love over pride. Then he paused. Ton Balogun, Kunle said gently, looking straight ahead, was once my brother. Gasps filled the room. I forgive him, Kunle continued. And I thank him. Because every test showed me who I truly am. Ton stood up, angry. You are lying. Kunle raised his hand. I am not here to fight. I am here to end silence. Security stepped closer. Ton froze. The room erupted in applause. By the time Kunle left the stage, the truth had settled like calm rain. Later that night, Kunle returned home tired but peaceful. Amina met him at the door. I am proud of you, she said. Kunle smiled. I am grateful for you. Weeks passed. Life slowed down. They still lived simply. They still greeted neighbors kindly. They still prayed together every morning. People now spoke differently. That is the woman who saw gold in dust, they said of Amina. That is the man who hid wealth but showed wisdom, they said of Kunle. One evening, as the sun set over Ibadan, Amina asked a quiet question. If you had been truly poor, she said, would I still have married you? Kunle laughed softly. You already answered that. Amina smiled. In a world full of noise, they had chosen peace. And in a town that mocked love, love had taught everyone a lesson they would never forget.